Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here for a quick talk. Today is a strange mixture of bits and pieces of everything without concentrating too much on one thing. I will have a short advertisement for next month's talk. I'm going to need people like you here to help. I'm going to need people like you here to help us with it for particular reasons. One of the strangest things with the town and things about the town is showing people where to go. And today is just a little bit of 3 short talks on short parts of the town. Short talks on short parts of the town. Sort of Lakeview, although at the moment we'll do Lakeview in more detail later on because I'm still working on lists of all people who lived in Lakeview. This year is Lakeview 90. It's also the Crescent 90. It's also the Crescent 75, right? And so over the next couple of months, maybe to concentrate a wee bit more on those peripheral suburbs, shall we call them that, as opposed to the town centres. And I think people will be interested. And certainly when I looked at the Crescent, we need a couple of experts to help out with that one and maybe to do a little bit of the talking. So, sorry. This morning is sort of walks, drives, cycles, and mysteries. And the idea is just a little place you can walk to. And I'm going to, just to make a point, please, that's your fault. It is not my fault. So I'm going to ask you, please be careful. And there's only one tiny little piece, which is a public road. And public roads, as you know nowadays, are impossible to walk on. The amount of traffic that's flying up them. So most of the places I have here have either got footpaths. If you did, it's your fault. It's not my fault, all right? So please be careful when you're going. The first thing I want to do here is because I was shown a drawing, and I don't know where it came from, and it's this drawing here. It's supposedly a drawing of Blayney. It's also on a different web page online, and it's called Troy Castle, AD 1610. And it appears to be castles of every description. And what I wanted to do first, just very shortly at the start, was to correct this. This is not Castleblayney in 1610, despite the fact I know one of the schools had it as part of a project, and people have put it on their line. And in fact, this was originally sent to me by Paul McCarthy in Ballybay, telling me it was Castleblayney in 1610. There were so many mistakes in it. So if there's anybody here who is good at technical drawing or art, now I'm the worst person in the world at perspective and drawings, but if somebody is good at it, could they do me a drawing based on the information that you're about to see, okay? Now, to those who know the point of perspective, or the vanishing point, if you want to call it that. Somebody picked the vanishing point as the top left-hand corner of this picture, and all of the lines, about its perspective on trying to make a picture rather than... Now, there's a lot of things wrong with this. If this is supposed to be what the whole castle is, tell me what's wrong with it. It was facing the wrong way. It's looking out over the lake, obviously. That's the first thing about it. And the other thing about it, of course, is the White Island is missing, right? If you're going to draw... Now, if you look at the drawing, you'll notice there is an island there, but the White Island is much more dominant in our lake than it is. So if someone were to go at drawing this, you'd have to put the White Island in and show it in properly, as it is in the photograph. The second big thing is, when you look down the western shore, that's the right-hand side of the photograph, the shore is much closer in to the White Island than it is in the drawing. It gives the impression that the lake in the drawing is way off to the right. But in reality, the Shrubbery Hill and the White Hill, that area of the lake, comes, it's called the Castle Lake, because it's beside the castle, and it comes in much closer. Now, the other thing that's wrong as well is, if this is supposed to be Castleblayney, the lake should be closer, right, to the castle. There's too much space behind it. when you walk from the space behind it, when you walk from the Hope Castle, down the path to the White Island, it's only one field, then you're at the lake shore, whereas this one is 2 or 3 fields before you get down. So it's it should be narrower. The second thing that's missing is on the left-hand side, the Black Island is missing. And the lake comes rising on the left-hand side, the Black Island is missing. And the lake comes round, at the bridge. It should come round to the left. So the lake comes much closer on the left-hand side than it does in this drawing as well. But the big difference is when you leave the Hope Castle and walk to the west up towards Barney's Green, in no time at all, you're at the foot of a very steep hill, because you have to walk up to the Church of Ireland's up on top of the hill and Barney's Green, and that's a very steep climb up. Whereas in this picture, it appears stretching away to the right-hand side. This is not Castleblayney Castle, okay? The second thing about it is the castle itself is the wrong shape. It's not an Ulster plantation house, which we are. We are very unique in Castleblayney in that our rich 2 years before the Ulster plantation. Monaghan was not part of the plantation of Ulster in 1609. Lord Blaney began building his castle in 1607. So we have the oldest plantation house had the oldest plantation house in the province. And it should be a shape that looks like. When Lord Blaney was building his castle, he was given 7-year lease and had to have the castle built within 7 years. And at some stage during that 7 years, he did this little drawing, see it here, and he sent it to King James I in London and said, "More of approve, improve me." The question is, did he actually build that castle? It says in the middle of a plot of the fort of Ballinalurgan, right? Which suggests that it is Castleblayney, obviously. But there's a number of major differences between Lord Blaney's plan and that picture of Ballinalurgan, right? Which suggests that it is Castleblayney, obviously. But there's a number of major differences between Lord Blaney's plan and that picture. The first thing is, look at the corner houses. Lord Blaney has 2 circular houses at the corners and 2 square houses. Plan and that picture. The first thing is, look at the corner houses. Lord Blaney has 2 circular houses at the corners and 2 square houses. Now, the 2 circular houses are spiral staircases that when the century came along, go up onto the corners and 2 square houses. Now, the 2 circular houses are spiral staircases that when the century came along, go up onto the walls. He was in there and up through a spiral staircase and out onto the walls, and then he could do sentry duty walking up and down the walls. The second thing, there are 2 entrances here. There's one here, right? This one. That's the one which leads down to the White Island, okay? It's a small entrance, it's a small gate. It's got a drawbridge down the pass and down to the White Island. The main gate is here, and it's an actual gatehouse. People lived in it as well. And that gatehouse is over on the church side of the site, looking up at the Church of Ireland on the hill. It's not facing the town. It's here in the centre. You see it here? But the one in the picture, if you look at it, the middle bit comes out from the walls, whereas in the plan, the 2 centerpieces go in rather than out. So did he actually build this house? And the answer is no, he didn't build this. Similar to this one. And so the king say, "Well done, Edward Blaney, good job there. You can have the lease here." And of course, he kept the lease on the property here, and 4 years later, he was given the lease on the other side of the lake, Mucknell, and so the whole thing then became his property. Now, he originally intended to build a house similar to the one that he was born in. Edward Blaney was a Welshman. And this is a drawing of Greganog Hall in Wales, which, by the way, is still standing. It's owned by the University of Wales, and you can go over and visit it. It's in parts, and you can go over and visit it. It's in Department of Botany of the University of Wales. And you walk in around with a coffee shop in it. It's a lovely place, beautiful place to visit. It's down in South Wales, right? It's called Greganach Hall. Way down south, down near the bottom. In the centre, way down south, down near the bottom. In the centre. Sorry? It's a forest around it. Yeah, yeah. And you go and park your car and go in around it. And there's actually a room in it today called the Blayney Room, which has the Blayney coat of arms in it, and there's a lot of things related to the Blayney family of Wales, his family, rather than the Castleblayney. And if you look at that house, you will see there are two large gables. You see the way they come out from the wall on either side, 3 stories tall. That appears to be what he intended to build. Right? A house similar to that, but he never got around to it. And eventually when he built it, I've turned the map around to show you, if you're walking from the town today and walk up the avenue here, you walk up towards that top picture and you meet the outside wall. You would go round the corner of that walls, and the main entrance is round at Barney's Green side, okay? And then you go round the back, and you have the wee gate down to the White Island, but there's no gate on the Black Island side. And you must remember that when Edward Blayney, who was a soldier, built this castle, Hugh O'Neill was still up in Dungannon. Ulster was still under the control of the Gaelic chieftains, and it's a defensive position. He's there, and they can see if there's an invasion coming from Tyrone, coming down from Katy, or you can see people coming in. It's a military defensive position as much as anything. And so that's why there's no entrances on the Black Island side, and there's no entrances here on the town side. Now, if you wanted to escape one, when the castle was attacked and plundered by the McMahons, you go out the main gate, was up at the church side. And if you go out the main gate, there's a road, and if you straight to your left and keep going straight, where do you come out? You go along the Shrubbery Hill, you come out at Dr. Roach's, and you're onto the coach road. Instead of turning left to the Shrubbery Hill, and you turn right up Barney's Green, you come out on Church Street, which takes you across, and eventually you hit the Mile Hill Road, and the Mile Hill Road takes you to Monaghan and takes you to safety that way. In other words, for Lord Blayney, safety was on the other side. So they're still there today. The one that runs on the bottom of Shrubbery Hill, and the one that goes up to Barney's Green and up onto Church Street. And the castle was built at a crossroads, where the Dublin Road meets the Monaghan Road, and that's why it was built in this spot. He's also military, he's looking at it from that point of view. So the question is, what did it look like? Right. This is what it looked like. Because this drawing was done by John Nixon in 1791, and it gives you an idea of what it looks like. You can see the gable wall. You see with the 3 windows in it? And it's pointed at the top. The bit in the middle, see this piece here? It goes back from the outer wall. It's recessed inwards. And the front door would have been about here. Okay? So as you came down from Barney's Green, into the castle, the barn as it's called, and you walk up to this, the front door is there. All the windows are facing towards the church, okay? And in the background, you can see the Black Island, okay? It's the Black Island that way, and the castle stood just there. There is no left wing to it, right? At one stage, he may have decided, he only built one wing and a middle. And that's a typical hill, and decided to do a drawing of the same building, only looking at it from the side and looking back towards the town. And you can see the gable wall is there, but there's a very long side wall down this side, okay? So that was what it looked like. That was standing there, stood as a ruin for 150 years before he eventually knocked it down. That's what it looked like. It's not like the first thing I showed you. That is a typical plantation house. So anyone who wants to see a plantation house, if you go to Lisnaskea in County Fermanagh, still standing, go up the main street in Lisnaskea and halfway up the main street, turn down to the left, and this castle is still standing there. It's called Castle Balfour. Now, Balfour and Blayney were contemporaries. In fact, Balfour's second wife was Lord Blayney's daughter, Anne. Right? Lord Blayney's daughter, Anne. Right? So they knew each other well. There was a major sexual scandal over the wife and the story, and a very quick version of the story. Lord Blayney was living here with a son and a daughter and so on. And then a nephew came over from Wales, Thomas, daughter and so on. And then a nephew came over from Wales, Thomas, a cousin of Mary's. And they appeared to have had a relationship, and there was all sorts of scandals about her outside of marriage. She had an intimate relationship with her first cousin, and it caused all sorts of different problems. And then when Balfour married her, there was a scandal and great pieces of reading about it. Eventually, they solved the problem by getting the cousin, Thomas was his name, and they sent him off to the English army over in Europe somewhere, and he never appeared back. And he was gone, army over in Europe somewhere, and he never appeared back. And he was gone, and she then became Lady Balfour. Balfour was much older than she was. And if you drive through County Fermanagh, there's a little village called Blayney. You've driven through it on the Petticoat Road. It's called on the Petticoat Road. It's called Blayney. And that little bit around the village of Blayney was land that was given to her as a dowry as part of her marriage to Balfour. But anyway, that's the scandal. This is Balfour's castle, and it's exactly the same as the Castleblayney, except for the fact that it's left to right. See the big three-story, the fact that it's left to right. See the big three-story gable wall? 3 windows going up the side wall. The flat bit is on the right-hand side of Balfour's castle, whereas in our castle is on the other side. And you see the main door here, right? And this wall here is recessed. And this wall here is recessed back from the gable wall, if you like. Now, the reason why Balfour's castle is shaped like this and ours is shaped right to left the other way is because the south is on that side, and you want the sun shining in through your main windows in the middle of the day to heat up the house. Whereas if you're here, the south's the other side, and the sun is shining. It's on the other side, so he builds the castle just the other way around to catch the sunshine. That's why it is. And this is an identical building to the one we had. here. The only thing is, on Lisnaskea, it's still standing. Go to Lisnaskea. Drive up the main street and go down to the left. There's a car park there. You can park the car and you can walk in around it and look around it, and you see this is what Castleblayney looked like. It's not like that funny drawing I showed at the start. It's not like that funny drawing I showed at the start. It's a plantation house, one gable, and then the main part of the front door recessed back from the main gable, and all the rooms there. It's 3 stories tall. Now, there is a legend that Lord Blayney built it. He couldn't have done that. He only had about 6 soldiers building the castle. There is no way today the American government could build a tunnel out under our lake to come up on an island. Lord Blayney with a few English soldiers definitely couldn't have done it. The reason why they thought there was a tunnel here is that a building that size had a huge functions, simply to hold it up. And that's what we had here. We had cellars and foundations, but it's not a tunnel. It never went out under the lake tunnel. I don't think that. They couldn't have built anything like that. But this is the Castleblayney one, and you see how similar they are, except they're right to left. They built the whole castle for 150 years. Now, this is a reconstruction of what Castle Balfour in County Fermanagh looked like when it was in its heyday. it appears that they put this yellow brick extension here. You see this? So it's got the big gable wall. It's got a wall here which is recessed about 6 feet back from the wall itself. It's got a front door here. Okay? So you've got the front door of the house. It's got a wall all the way around it. But look at the things on the corners of the walls. Corners of the walls. Some of them are circular, spiral staircase buildings. And the one down at this end here is a square little house as well. So some of the corners are circular. And the idea is that the soldiers doing sentry duty went in and up the spiral. Sentry duty went in and up the spiral staircase and then could walk along the top of the walls and see what was going on. But also inside the bawn here, in this area, there would have been a tavern, okay, separate from the castle. So I'm assuming this here is about Bursary. This here is about Bursary. This here is supposed to be the tavern. It's a 2-story one. It wouldn't have been 2-story here. And the tavern here was owned by a woman called Anne Tredew, T-R-E-D-W-E. She ran the first bar and the first pub in Castleblayney up here in 16. Also had pubs in Carrick Cross and were famous for their beer selling. Also within the walls, there had to be a blacksmith shop, right? Cobblers, tailors, and grocery shop. You know, there were all sorts of shops. And some of them would have been built along the walls. Some were simply leaned to the horses. It's an actual community living with it. And that's what Castleblayney roughly would have looked like in its heyday. This is a complete plantation house. And our castle would be similar to this. And you can see it here. As they were on sentry duty. A circular tower at each end. Tavern, I'd say, here, a number of other shops along the side here, horses inside, main gates, and all sorts of stuff. And this stood up here for 150 years, till the McMahons got at it. And anyway, actually, this castle was. When Lord Blaney wrote the first plot, or the first plan of the castle, he gave a scale. He said it was a square, 200-foot square. Roughly. So what I decided to do was to see, could I draw the bawn, if you like, the walls, and draw a 200-foot square up here and see how it would fit. Okay? Now, this is the present Hope Castle, right? This is the circular window facing the lake, you know, on the other side. This is the path going from the castle down to the White Island. We know that one. Okay. This is the front door today. Well, if it's still standing up there, I haven't been up there. We see what construction's been done. This is the front door. What construction's been done. This is the front door. And you see how it faces out onto the circle, and then you go down the avenue and into the town. And that's what I think the castle was roughly. Now, the 200-foot, to me, is a sort of an approximation. It's not necessarily exact. But this is close to it, okay? I put a wee circular tower at this end, a circular tower at that end, a square house at this end, and a square house at that end, and I put the wall around the outside. One of the entrances is here. Exactly. The entrances is here. Exactly where the entrance is to the White Island today. And on the original plan, that's where Lord Blaney had his wee side gate. And that makes sense. And the main gate was somewhere about here. Now, I think it was probably a little bit further back, somewhere like here. And those who know, when you walk up there, and you walk up this path here, and come to about here and head off that way, you go off to Strawberry Hill and you eventually come out on the Dundalk Road and onto the Coach Road. And then if the main gate was here and you went this way, Coach Road. And then if the main gate was here and you went this way, you go up along the wall and you're up into Barney's Green and you're up onto Church Street. And I think that's what it was. The other things which work is that this line here, which is the outer wall, doesn't go through the whole castle. It's surely been up there recently. You know the way it falls off? There's a wee slope. But this wall is built at the top of that slope. In other words, it's not halfway down the hill. You wouldn't put a wall halfway down the hill. It's at the top of the slope, just outside the sitting room in the Hope Castle. And this line here, which is the Uttons, as close nearly as you get to the front wall of the annex and to the orchard wall. And the possibility is that the orchard wall is in line, you know what I mean by the orchard wall, with another one, is where the outer limit. Stories tall, Black Island in the background, okay? Facing towards the church. Not the town is off to the left here. It faces the church. It faces the two roads, because you want to make a quick escape if you want to get out. And some of the walls that are still standing there are part of the original one. So go for a walk up, round where the grotto was, okay? And then there's the dip down into, you know, the castle kitchens, and have a look at those walls. Some of those walls are part of the original castle. There's the dip down into, you know, the castle kitchens, and have a look at those walls. Some of those walls are part of the original castle. This is one, okay? You can see the upper part of this wall. Mrs. Hope had her garden up there, you know, which way as the castle. This is one, okay? You can see the upper part of this wall. Mrs. Hope had her garden up there, you know, which way as up. And there's a wee entrance here with steps that you can step up into the garden. But you've got the garden up there, you know, which way as up. And there's a wee entrance here with steps that you can step up into the garden. But look at the wall itself. The upper part is modern, lovely cut stone, finished off 1950. Well, that bit at the bottom is long before 1850, right? I believe that that's part of the original castle walls. And when you look around that whole area, as you go down into the, you know, into the old kitchens of the castle, look at the walls down both sides. They're very, very old, that original castle in some form. I can't 100% figure out exactly what the shape is. Someone's going to have to work that out. Now, if you go up those steps, and because of the green railings now, you can't get round properly, but if you could go up those steps and walk round, you'd see too strange here. You see how straight it is? Absolutely perfectly vertical wall, well built, 1850s. Look at the one on this side. It's on a slope. Why would you build the wall as? And the two are supposed to match each other, but they don't. One's dead straight and the other's cross. Why is the other one that built its castle so high? To make it stable, they made the bottoms of the walls wider. So as you went up, sort of the walls, you know, it gave the walls more stability. And when you look inside, it is full of rubble. And that's the way Lord Blaney will build it. That's the way Lord Blaney will build it. When he put the stones around and he just put the rubbish in and built up his walls. So the castle was there. It stood there till the morning of the 23rd of October, 1641, when a fellow called Hugh Macduff McMahon came up and knocked on the gate and said, "We lost a few sheep." 1641, when a fellow called Hugh Macduff McMahon came up and knocked on the gate and said, "We lost a few sheep." You didn't see them wandering about anywhere, so they opened the gate and they let the McMahons in, and the McMahons proceeded to massacre 17 people up there. They butchered them, they hanged them, they chopped them. One poor fellow, they locked him in a room and just left him in the room. They butchered them, they hanged them, they chopped them. One poor fellow, they locked him in a room and just left him in the room. He starved to death in the room. And the minister, Lugfoot, was killed as well. They smashed their brains in and the bodies were all left up there. And it was the first of the major massacres of the 1641 rebellion. Lord Blaney wasn't at home. He managed to escape up the Culture Road and ended up in Slane and brought the news to Dublin that the McMahons were revolting. It's all McMahons are revolting indeed. And That's a Glen Walt. Anyway, Blaney escaped, but his wife didn't. Now, we must tell the history of women, not men. And Lady Jane Blaney was a fabulous woman, living in the middle of the 1600s, gave birth to 12 children, outlived all of her children, and died at 85 years of age. On the morning of the 23rd of October, herself and Ian's, and they were dragged all over Monaghan. They ended up in Rockcurry and Ahabog. They were dragged about. She gives a description of how she was treated and had to drink water out of puddles on the road. And one of her children died during the period the McMahons were holding her captive. And eventually, the convent in Termonfeckin and took the nuns prisoners and swapped the nuns from Termonfeckin and got Lady Blaney and her family released. Right. The poor Lady Jane never came back to Castleblayney after that morning. She went to live in Dublin and spent the rest of her life in Dublin. And he was the commander of the British forces at the Battle of Benburb when he was killed at Benburb, and I think is buried in Benburb Abbey. Though it says in some of the records he was buried in Monaghan, I don't think he is. He's in Benburb. And she lived on Dublin, all her children died, and she's buried in St. Michan's Church. Crusaders in it at the back of the GPO there. She was buried in that church, but they made a terrible mistake when they buried her. They buried her beside her son, Richard, and said she was his wife. She wasn't his wife. She was actually his mother. And she was about 85, 90 years of age when she died, had a very tough life. But anyway, that castle stood there for that, and the Blaney's never went back to it. It stood as a ruin from 1641 till the New Hope Castle was built. And the story was that in order to bring sand in from Concord Wood and stones, they had barges going out the lake. And when the barges were well weighed down. But on the way back out again, they were empty and they were floating on top, high in the water. And what Lord Blaney did was to dismantle some of the castle here, that old castle, and rebuilt it out in Concord Wood. And the locals decided to make a joke of it because it was captured by the McMahons during the rebellion in 1641. And this was a photograph which Maura Riley gave me. I thought initially it was more in the photograph. It isn't. It could be some of the Moor girls. I'm not sure. Paul maybe would recognise the lady. I don't know who the lady is in the picture, but that was in the early 1960s. And that is, I believe, part of the castle that Lord Blaney took out, rebuilt out in Concord Wood as a folly. Because in those days, it was a big thing. Well, if you had a big estate, that you needed something to talk about as a sort of a talking point somewhere else, well then, this strange castle, which never was explained properly, I think it's just it's construction of it. I don't know what's standing there at the moment. There is still something there, is there? Little bits of the wall still there. When you sit in the restaurant, which down, there's a wee hillock down there before you come to the lake, and it's on top of that if you want to walk down. It used to be a lovely walk in the old days when it was a really good. Anyway, I would like, if there's anyone here, I'll see Liam Martha's there, don't leave him for any, do a bit of perspective technical drawing for me to draw a proper diagram. To draw a proper one of this. Right. Only with the white island on it, and with the house the right shape, okay? Up towards the hill, and put the slope of the hill on it, and a wee bit of a lake on the left, show where the Black Island is, and do a perspective. I'm the world's worst person on perspectives and trying to draw something. Do anyone know anyone?
Yes.
I'll give them the information on the drawings. Give them the information on the drawings. Would do it. Yeah, someone like that who could do a better version of it than that.
Yeah.
Because that definitely. Sorry? He could do that. Frankie Rainey.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he's talking to Frankie, tell him, yes, just do it.
Yeah.
Frankie Rainey.
Yeah.
Yeah. If he's talking to Frankie, tell him, yes, just do it.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a drawing that looks like what it was, and not like something that it wasn't, which that there's too many errors in that. It isn't. That isn't the Castleblayney house. Right, it's the wrong shape. That isn't the Castleblayney house. Right, it's the wrong shape. The islands are wrong. The fields around it are wrong. A good drawer could do a better version than that for us. And once you have it done, it is Blaisdell. It's supposed to be than that for us. And once you have it done, it is Blaisdell. It's supposed to be the. I don't know, because there's another site which calls it Troy Castle. Now, I don't know where Troy Castle is in Ulster, but somebody else claims it's a different castle. And then someone took this one and claims it's a different castle. And then someone took this one and it's not. Well, all the details are wrong for a start. No, putting fields around it and having people working in the fields, I've no problem with that. That's okay, except they're the wrong shape. They should slope it to that. That's okay, except they're the wrong shape. They should slope it to the right. It's the features are wrong. I think someone could do a better job. That's my view on it anyway. And if we had it done once, we'd have it done this. Okay? We had it done once, we'd have it done this. Okay? Any queries there now, Casa? By the way, just walk up the avenue, turn right in just before you come to the grotto, and duck down to where the entrance to and look at the walls. And even the window that's up there, I think, where the bell used to be, I think that's part of the original wall, and there's little pieces. You can see how old some of the walls are in comparison to Mrs. Hope. You know Mrs. Hope built, because she's got lovely cut stone that the French stonemason has cut for her. Whereas the original ones are just out loose stones piled in an old wall built up.